Here we're learning a Sikha from the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe. Some say it is the Melech HaMashiach, and for sure will bring Melech HaMashiach. And how will the Mashiach come? What's the whole thing of Mashiach? What's the Mashiach? Mashiach is going to be a person that's going to teach everyone, all of the Jews, Torah, and bring all of the non-Jews to do the 7 Noahide commandments. Why? Because everyone will start recognizing the Creator that's creating us. How close He is to us, how much He loves us, what He wants. Everyone will know the Creator. Yakiru v'yedu kol yishvei tevel. The whole world will know the Creator. And that's what the idea of Chassidut is, to teach us about God. Behar. It's on page 179. Al pasuk, on the pasuk, it says, "V'karatem dror ba'oretz l'kol yoshvel." You will call it a day of freedom for the land of Israel to everyone that lives in it. What's this talking about? What is their freedom? On what's called the Yovel year, the 50th year. You count Shemitah. You count Shemitahs. The Rambam explains exactly when they began to count it, and etc. But there's 7 years, and in the 7th year, 6 years in Israel are regular years as far as agriculture goes. As far as that goes, in those years you work your field, do everything, and they have all the regular. But on the 7th year, which is called the Shemitah year, in that year you don't work on the ground. You don't work on the laws are pretty complicated, but you don't work on the ground. You can do things in order just to maintain your ground so it doesn't wreck. But you're not supposed to harvest your fruits or work on the ground on this 7th year. Not supposed to plant or plow. 7th year. And after 7 of these 7 years, 7 Shemitahs, you get the 50th year, which is an additional year. And that year is called Yovel, or in English, the Jubilee year. And on this year, all of the slaves go free. The Jewish slaves, all the Jewish slaves go free. All of the land, if you sold land in Israel to someone, it comes back to you. You can only sell land for this up to the 50th year, then it comes back. And this idea of the Jubilee really is only applicable in the time where there was the Beis HaMikdash, and all the Jews are in the land of Israel. So now, it's not actually done as far as the land goes, but it's still, like we said many times before, and that's one of the main lessons of Chassidut, that the Torah is eternal, and everything that's mentioned in the Torah is inside of us also. And because the whole purpose of man is to serve the Creator, do what the Creator wants, and make this world into a perfect place, as therefore, the Torah, it tells us what to do and how to serve Him. And that we can learn from every word in the Torah, from Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Everybody has an Abraham inside of him, and a Yitzchak, and a Yaakov, and a Lavan, and a Paro, and a Bilam. All these things are inside of us. Going out of Egypt, very popular. Everybody has an Egypt. Going out of Egypt. And everyone also has inside of himself a Jubilee year. And also in the spiritual levels, there's also what's called a Jubilee year. And the spiritual part of the Jew perceives the spiritual part of the worlds. And also in God, who creates all these worlds and Jews and people, there's also what's called a Jubilee year. So what is it? We'll see. So first of all, it says in the Torah, when this Jubilee year comes, Ukaratem Doror Ba'oretz, there will be a freedom in the land. The Kol Yoshveh, I pressed the wrong button over here. Kol Yoshveh, to all of the dwellers of the land. Omer the Gemara says, Shedin Yovel Chol Rag B'Zaman Kol Yoshveh Alel. It says that the law of the Yovel is only when all of the Jews are found in the land of Israel. All. That's what it says in the Gemara. Arachim. Also, the Rambam brings laws of Shemitah and Yovel. Therefore, Mishagalo Shevet Reuven, when Reuven and Gad and half Shevet Menashe, as soon as they became exiled, the first temple, there was no Yovelos. There was no more any Yovel. Limrodot, nevertheless, it says in the Gemara, Shagam betekufa abayit sheni. Nevertheless, in the second temple, there were Jubilee years. The Kadesh Shemitin. They made Shemitah years. Kevan sheminyan shanot hashmitim matchil mi'ashana shel achre shanat yovel. Because when do you start counting the Shemitah year? Shemitah is the 7 year periods. And after seven year periods, there's the Yovel. But also after the Yovel, then you start counting again, recounting the Shemitah years. Like the Chamim, that the Shanas Chamishim, that the Yovel year, this number 50th year, is not one of the Shemitah years. So you count 7 times 7, 49, and then there's a 50th year. That's the opinion of the Chachamim. But there's another opinion that says no, that the 49th year is the Yovel. That the Yovel is one of the Shemitah years. It's just like a big Shemitah year.
You did say that they counted the Yovel during the second temple?
When everybody came back.
Everybody came back?
We'll see. Well, let's look and see. Therefore, the Moab is Kedei, in order in order that there should be Al Kach Shoalim Bali Tosfos. The Tosfos, people in the great rabbis that wrote the Tosfot. Tosfot is a commentary on the Talmud that was written after Rashi wrote his commentary, like something like 800 years ago, 900 years ago. And the Talmud Yerushalmi, and it says, Bisman she'iyata mishamet yovel, iyata mishamet shvit. It says the time when the yovel is not active, when this yovel year does not cause the lands to go back and all the slaves to go free. When the yovel is not working, there is no Shemitah year. If so, but yovelos. It says in the time of the second temple, there was no yovel year. They counted it. They counted this. They said this is the yovel year, but they didn't apply any of the laws of the yovel year. That the Jewish slaves went free and the lands went back to the people. But it should be that if there's no yovel, there is also no more Shemitah years. You shouldn't be counting them. What's going on?
So they needed a yovel, even though they didn't do a yovel.
Right.
The stupid question is, I'm jumping, but what about today? I think next year's a Shemitah year. Do we know the yovel yet? How do we do this?
We'll see. Rashi explains that in the second temple, Shemitah Rachman Rabbanan. He said that it's true. They didn't count the Shemitah years. They counted it only from the rabbis. It wasn't a Torah commandment anymore. Ach Bali Tosfot, that the Tosfot a lot of times disagree with what Rashi says. A lot of them were the son-in-laws of Rashi. Shelefi hane'amar b'Gemara shamana yovlo l'kadesh shemiti, and that the only reason that they counted the yovel years was in order to make applicable the shemitah years as a shemitah no eges midaraisa. That the Tosfos says that no, if you count the yovel at all, then that means that the Shemitah must be from the Torah. Even if the Yovel is not applicable, even though you don't apply the laws of the Yovel, but nevertheless, that doesn't have any effect on the Shemitah years, on the 7th year, B'shone me'anemar, different from what it says in the Talmud Yerushalmi. So here we have several opinions. The Talmud, according to one opinion, if there's no Yovel, there's no Shemitah at all. According to the other opinion, is if there's no Yovel, but the Shemitah is from the rabbis. And another opinion, the opinion that's Rashi, and another opinion, the explanation from the Tosfot is that no, the Yovel is from the Shemitah is from the Torah. And nowadays the Shemitah year is from the Torah. So everybody agrees that nowadays we do the Shemitah year. So the question is are we doing the Shemitah year because it's commandment from the Torah? Is it commandment from the rabbis? Or maybe it's something else totally. Who knows what? Maybe we're just doing it as a remembrance or something. I don't know. But according to the first opinion, there shouldn't be any Shemitah years at all. Just like there's no Yovel year at all. Yedua, it is known base. Yedua, it's known. Shatanaim v'amorayim pasku et halachot lamata kafi riyatam et enyan lamayla. We learned this there was one of the Maimorim. We learned about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Remember, we just finished learning around. We learned about the Tanaim. The Tanas were great rabbis that lived right at the end of the Second Temple and continued after the destruction of the Second Temple. A little bit. And they were tremendous, like I said, that it says in the Talmud, I think of the Zohar, that each one of them had the power to raise the dead. Tremendously holy people. And after them came their pupils. This was after Rabbeinu HaKodesh. Came their pupils, the next generations, and those were called Amoraim. So the Amoraim weren't a lot less holy than the Tanaim, but they were a little bit less. They didn't have the same exact level. Nevertheless, they were tremendously holy people, and their whole lives were totally spiritual lives. In other words, the world had virtually no effect on them whatsoever. Their all their lives were just to do what God wanted and say what God wanted and think what God wanted and feel what God wanted as much as they could. And they came to explain the Torah. That was their whole lives, was just to explain the Torah. They realized the Torah is God's word, and they also realized that a lot of it is very vague. And it can't be that God wanted it to be vague for no reason. So they understood the reason that God made the Torah vague was not to confuse us, or that everybody could just do what they wanted to, interpret it how they wanted, but rather there must be a true interpretation. And they sat and they discussed this, the Tanaim and the Amoraim, and then they came up with laws. Again, now the laws that they came up with were all what they call Ruach HaKodesh. These people did nothing of their own mind. They didn't take drugs, or they didn't have any influences from outside of just God, what God wanted in the Torah. So everything that they said, first of all, was checked and argued about back and forth and purified so that everyone was sure 100% that what they say had no personal motives whatsoever. It was only what God wanted them to say. But nevertheless, God wanted them to argue. He wanted them, Beit Hillel, to have a different opinion than Beit Shammai. That's the Torah. That's the oral Torah. That's why God made a lot of these things vague, so that there would be these arguments and they would come to the conclusion and they would nevertheless still have faith in the creator of the universe and what he said. So, the Tanaim and the Amoraim, everything they said in this, all the laws that they decided, were because they saw that that's the way it was spiritually. They saw that this is what God wants. They weren't considering practicality or considering their own personalities or whatever it was. Their only interest was, no motivation was, what does God want? What is going on in the spiritual worlds? And according to that, they decided what to do here. Kavan Shakal Tana, since that each one of these Tanaim or the Amoraim saw above according to his individual soul, Therefore, there are arguments in different laws. Hilafi dargat shorsh and neshama, because according to the level of their soul of one Tana, hadin ukach, the law is this way. But according to another, he sees the godliness a little bit different way, as the law could be different. That's why they argued, and that's why they finally came to conclusions. Kach yesh lomar, we can also say b'inyanenu, in our subject. There is an argument between the Talmud Bavli and the Talmud Yerushalmi, according to the Tosfot. The Talmud Bavli was written after the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Talmud Yerushalmi was written by Rabbi Yochanan, and that was written shortly after the destruction of the temple. And the Talmud Bavli was written like 100-something years old later, and that was written by who? By Ravina and Rav Ashi and Rav Usha, Bavli, Blabein Talmud Yerushalmi. That's an argument between the Talmud Bavli and the Talmud Yerushalmi about this idea of the Shemitah year. Is the Shemitah year, the 7-year period, is that from the Torah or from the rabbis? Im Shvi'it Chala Midoraita Bizman Sheyovel Eino Chal. The fact that the Shemitah years are not from the Torah in the time when there is no Yovel, it comes from the fact that She'inin Ashmita Kafishu Mitzad Mehuto Shel Talmud Bavli B'machashakim Hoshivani Nemuch Yoter Midargat Ashmita Kafishu Mitzad Talmud Yerushalmi. Is lower than it is according to the Talmud Yerushalmi. Okay, let's look at this a little bit. What's going on over here? The greatest tragedies, nowadays, the greatest tragedy we can think of is the Holocaust, which is, that's one terrible tragedy. But really, if you go back in history, as far as the Jewish people go, the tragedy of the destruction of the first and second temples was much greater, as far as its effect on the Jewish people. True, the Holocaust was directed toward the Jewish people because they were Jews. There was absolutely nothing political or strategic about it. It was purely a spiritual thing that the Nazis just wanted to kill Jews. They didn't care where they were, if they were old, young, if they were in forests, if they were assimilated, they weren't. Okay, that was the terrible thing about the Holocaust, that it was brought to the Jewish people. The first and the second temple, you can say that destruction was because there were people who were taking over the world. There were the Babylonians, and then after it was the Romans. And they conquered Israel. And maybe they were a little bit too vicious as far as, killing the people goes. But they were pretty vicious people anyway. They killed a lot of people. And they killed the Jews. Let's say, you could say they killed the Jews because they were Israelis. Who knows? That's just because they were Jews. Anyway, the first and the second temple, the effect that it had on the Jewish people was much worse. Why? Because the Holocaust only affected 1/3 of the Jewish people, let's say. Third, half. And there was places to run. You could run away. But the first and the second temple, that affected all of the Jews. And at that time, there was no place for them to run. They were all in the same place. They were all in Eretz Israel. And also it destroyed the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple was the center of the connection between God and the Jews. It was the marriage canopy between the Jews and God. That was awful. It destroyed the very core of the Jews being in the world. The Beit HaMikdash was a holy place in the world. And that was the connection of the Jews to the world, to fix up the world. As soon as that was destroyed, that was really bad. That was really bad. It destroyed the anchor of the Jews. The Jewish identity was destroyed. As far as the Holocaust, Jewish identity had already been, there were people working on destroying Jewish identity way before the Holocaust, the Reform, conservative, etc. Zionism, to change Jewish identity, destroy Jewish identity. But here in the first and the second temple, the temple, that was Jewish, that was it. You would go there, you would feel that there's a creator of the universe. Why they sinned. Okay, it's different. Anyway. So here we have the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple. only thing the Jews had now to hold them together was the Torah. That's all they had. When all the Jews were in the land of Israel, everybody knew what the Torah was, and if a person would make a mistake, everybody was religious. A person would make a mistake, so there was 1,000 rabbis walking down the street saying, excuse me, that's not the way you do it, this is wrong. But as soon as the Jews started going into exile, they were all spread out, there was no rabbis anymore. Everybody's all spread out, and everybody could do what they wanted. So they had to write everything down. That's what it said, Eit lasot l'Hashem, efiru toratecha. It's a time to do for God. Before that, the oral Torah was not written down. You didn't have to write it down. There were so many people that knew what the laws were. But after the destruction of the first and the second temples, and the Jews started getting spread out, and there was no one to ask questions to, and even if there was no, it was very hard to find anybody who knew all the laws. There were people who would be experts in some of the laws, and there was also forgetting. People started forgetting laws, forgetting this. You have to remember there's tremendous troubles going on there. And the disturbances that made a normal person crazy. So it was very hard to find a person with a mind settled enough that he knew what all the laws were of the Torah. So they decided we have no choice, we have to write it down. So first of all came Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and he wrote down the Mishnah. And then people said they didn't understand. The Mishnah was like shorthand to tell you about, just in general, what the laws are. And the details, the rabbis would explain. But it got worse. The people just didn't know how to explain the Mishnah. So came along Rabbi Yochanan, and he put down the Talmud Yerushalmi. Now the Talmud Yerushalmi was written mostly in Israel. It was written in Israel. Israel is holy. Holy means you feel godliness, you feel the truth, you feel what's right. That's what the ideal of Israel is now. They're trying to change it, but it's not going to be changed. Eventually, Israel is the holy. What does it mean, holy? It's clear. You can see clearly what's right and what's wrong. Ideally, you can.
Can't be changed.
Huh?
Can't be changed.
Well, it can be covered over. It can be certainly confused. Okay, we won't talk about that. We'll talk about that another time. Hopefully, we'll never talk about it. And so the Yerushalmi Talmud was much more straightforward and clear. About 100 years later, there was written the Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud was written. There were Jews that remained in Babel. After the first temple, there were Jews that remained there. And when the second temple was destroyed, there's Jews that went there, and they went to other places also, but they also went there. So there was the Babylonian Talmud. Usually anyone who's mentioned in the Talmud Bavli, if it's called Rav, Rav Ada, Rav Abahu, Rav, anyway, Rav, if it says Rav, it means he came from Babel. If it says Rebbe Akiva, Rebbe Yochanan, Rebbe is from Eretz Yisrael. So the Talmud Bavli was much more confused.
That's one of the reasons. Jews in Iraq.
Yeah, there still are. I think, I'm not sure that there still are, but I think there are. Hard to believe. I don't think that there are. There are still Jews in Iran. I think there's even Jews in Syria.
Where in Iran?
I don't know. There's supposed to be like 20,000 Jews living in Iran.
But where?
I don't know. I don't know the cities.
You said that beautiful video of the
Yeah, sure. Of Esther and Mordechai, Iran.
The Purim story.
Yeah, where they're buried. There's a little shul down there, and it's
Is there a yeshiva?
No, I don't think.
Somebody told me there is.
Could be. Okay.
So this is why if I go outside to the library, I can find those 3 books. Got one in Talmud Bavli.
Sure.
Why?
Babel. Okay, so I'll explain to you. No. There are certain people, the Ger Chassidim, they took on themselves to finish the Talmud Yerushalmi. I think every year they learn Talmud Yerushalmi. The reason is Talmud Bavli is much more confused, opaque. It's much harder to see the truth, and there's many more arguments in the Talmud Bavli. And because there are many more arguments, therefore they say that the laws are more, have been refined more and more times, and have been through more tests. So the law is usually like the Talmud Bavli. Even though the Talmud Yerushalmi is much more straightforward, that is how do you want to say, a disadvantage. Because there's less arguments, so therefore the truth is less, hasn't been worked on. It didn't come out so much truth. It hasn't been worked on. So the law is like the Talmud. But nevertheless, however it is, the Talmud Bavli is much longer, and it's much more confused. That's one of the reasons it's called Bavli, because it's Balal Minakol, it's swallowed up in Akol, and it's also Mubulbal. It's the same thing with Migdal Bavel and Migdal Bavel. So, so the Rebbe now wants to say like this, that the Talmud Bavli, because the laws were much more concealed and they had much more work in order to bring it out, it was a lower level than the Talmud Yerushalmi. In other words, the Talmud Bavli was down to earth. The Talmud Yerushalmi was up in the air. It's almost like the professor in the university going asking the janitor, what do you think about this? And sometimes the janitor can have better advice, because he's been in the world. He sees what the world is like. And the professor, he thought about this problem, for a week or something like that. And then sometimes you can get better information from lower than you can from higher. So that's the Talmud Bavli. Okay, so it says. So now let's go back to our subject. The Talmud Bavli, we have an argument. Is the Shemitah year, the 7-year period, is that nowadays from the Torah or is it from the rabbis? Is it from the Torah or from the rabbis? Let me just make another short innuendo, because who knows who's seeing these videos. I hope it's for people that know less than me. So I'll explain. What does it right? What does it mean things are from the Torah or from the rabbis? How do the rabbis have the right to go and make up laws? Where is this coming from? So there's also a big argument in the beginning of the Rambam. He brings between the Ramban and Rambam if the laws of the rabbis are also from the Torah or not. Do they have the power of the Torah? Why? Because where did the rabbis get this idea to go and make up laws? Who said that they could make up laws? Who cares how holy they are? They can't. Well, the reason they make up laws is because the Torah told them.
That's not making up laws.
That's right. So it's one of the 10. But no, laws. But there are laws that come from them. In other words, laws that are not written in the Torah, and they make up rabbinical laws.
Well,
for instance, the laws. Take an example. Who gives them a right to make a fence?
The Torah.
For instance, so that's what I'm trying to say. The Torah gives them. It says, "Al pia davar asher yerucha," right? Lo sasuru mi davar asher yeru. The Torah gives the rabbis not just the right, but the obligation that they must make up laws from the rabbis. So therefore, we have all the laws of like Shabbat. We have muktzah, for instance, these laws that are muktzah on Shabbos, lighting candles on Shabbos, lighting candles on Yom Tov, the candles of Chanukah, reading the Megillah. All these things are not mentioned in the Torah, and we make a blessing. Asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, that God commanded us with His commandments, and He told us why? Because God commanded us. How did He command us? When He put in the Torah the command that the rabbis must make up laws, and of course we have to have faith that these rabbis were genuine. And if we look into their lives, we can see that these people were not subject to crowd pressure, peer pressure. These people were only interested in one thing: finding out what God wants. And sometimes to make it as difficult as possible. Sometimes. To put fences, like you say, to make things difficult. Make fences around the Torah. Fences.
I thought that meant keeping the Torah safe, like from bad hands.
That's right. Keeping the Torah, no, not just from bad hands. Keeping the Torah safe so that people won't take the Torah lightly. They won't take the Torah lightly. In other words, people will say, you have to keep the Shabbat. Means, you just mentioned that it's Shabbat, you do whatever you want to.
But that's not true. There's a set of halachas that Hashem wants us to follow.
Right, but how do we know those halachas? Because the rabbis told us. If there weren't for the rabbis in the Talmud, we would never know what these laws were. Everybody would make up.
tells the rabbis first.
Yes, of course.
The Torah.
And they tell us. But if it wasn't that, then every person in the world would consider himself to be a rabbi. All you have to do is know a little bit of Hebrew, or not even that. You can just read it in English.
Actually, you have to go to school. You could do it without speaking. You just have to go to hardcore yeshiva. After yeshiva, you have to learn. and then you'd study, and then you could get smicha and become a rabbi. That's the way to do it. If
you
you
want to,
rabbi.
but to be a good Jew, you don't have to be a rabbi.
That's
and also to be a rabbi,
knowledge.
you don't have to be a good Jew. No, let's go. Come on.
Yeah, of course.
We'll talk about that
the way
later.
it
Let's
is.
go. Come. Kach yesh lomar ben Yanenu. Also, we can say that the argument between the Talmud Bavli and the Talmud Yerushalmi, according to the Tosfot, is im shvit chal midroisa. If the 7-year period called the Shemitah, the Shvit, is from the Torah, in the time when there is no Yovel, or not. This comes from the fact that the inyan of Shemitah, the whole idea of what is the Shemitah, kafi shehu, as it is, mitzad mehuto shel Talmud, as it is in the Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud, which the Babylonian Talmud is called, it's hinted at by what's called b'machashakim hoshivani, in darkness you have put me. It's one of the sentences of in Eicha. What do you call it? Lamentations. Namuch yoter midargat hashmita kafi shiyu lefi Talmud Yerushalmi, because the Talmud Bavli is lower and more dark than the Talmud Yerushalmi. Kadei shehit kayem hashmita bishleimuta deraita, in order that the Talmud Bavli looks at the Shemitah and says, we can't do it. We can't do it. The Talmud, the Shemitah, according to the Talmud Bavli, looks at it and looks at everything in a dark way. It says, no, the Shemitah nowadays is only from the rabbis. Kadei, in order to take a Shemitah b'shleimuta b'deraita, mitzad Talmud Yerushalmi, zekuka l'inyan Yovel. In order to do the Yerushalmi, do the Shemitah properly, it has to be the Jubilee year, Hanaleh Shemitah, which is higher than the Shemitah. But according to the Talmud Bavli, there could be Shemitah complete even when there is no Yovel, like we're going to explain later on. Yes, okay, so I'm beginning to understand that according to the Talmud Bavli, the Shemitah nowadays is from the Torah. And according to the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Shemitah nowadays is only from the rabbis. Why? Because the Talmud Yerushalmi says if you want to have the Yovel, if you want to have the Shemitah done properly, it has to be done 100% with the Yovel, which is a higher level, shining into the Shemitah. And the Yovel represents a higher spiritual level than the Shemitah. Yovel is a total rest from this world, which is not the case. Shemitah is only a partial rest. Therefore, according to the Yerushalmi, in order to have the Shemitah, which is in its true high level, you have to have the Yovel year. Because the Talmud Yerushalmi says you can't mess around. If you're going to do it, you have to do it 100% right. Therefore, nowadays, the Yovel, the Shemitah year, is only from the rabbis, according to the Yerushalmi, because everything is not there. It has to be perfect. According to the Bavli, right, confusion is also okay. Just because it's confused and there's no Talmud Yerushalmi, there's no Yovel, that doesn't take away from the holiness of the Shemitah. Because the Shemitah it doesn't require such a high level of holiness and perfection as the Talmud Yerushalmi requires.
This is a stupid question. When did all this start?
In the Second Temple.
Okay, so but the first year, I mean, it started whatever year they chose to start the counting. That was like rabbinical. It wasn't like
No.
Shabbos.
No.
You know, every day is.
No. After, if I'm not mistaken, I have to remember what the Rambam says, but if I'm not mistaken, after they divided up the Israel, they came in the Yehoshua came and he conquered Israel. It took him 7 years or 14 years.
Yeah.
7 years. And then there's another 7 years. Another 7 years it took them to divide the land up. As soon as they did, then they started keeping the Shemitah years. We can look it up and see.
But then because also it's problematic because like even the destruction of the second temple, there's really no agreement as to what year that happened.
No.
Yeah,
Of course
not.
No, of course there is.
No, is it?
What year the second temple was destroyed?
By our calendar, there's not agreement.
I don't know. I've never heard of such a thing. Never heard such a thing.
Within a range.
First time I've ever heard such a thing like that. Never heard such a thing. The Jews got out of Egypt on 2448. They were in the desert for 40 years.
Yeah.
Until the first temple was built was 440 years exactly. Right? That's 480 years after they got out of this. The first temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av, and 410 years later, they were in the Babylonian exile for 70 years. They came back exactly 420 years later after they came back. The second temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. They know exactly what the time is, exactly what the date is. Too much university. You've been going to the university too much. I told you, keep away from them. Keep away from them university books. Yeah. Who knows?
It's a UFO.
Yeah. UFO book or something. Who knows what it is? I don't know. Where the Ark is hidden. Okay. Too many movies, huh? Okay. All right, ready? Here we go. So according to this, according to the Yerushalmi, nowadays Shemitah is from the rabbis, and according to the Bavli, today the Shemitah is from the Torah. Now, what difference does it make if it's from the rabbis or from the Torah? Like we said, the rabbis have a command from the Torah to make up the laws.
Does this also take into effect? Some people say that the 49th year is the Jubilee year, and some people say that.
We'll see. We'll talk about. No. We're going into the opinion. We're going. That's only how to count it. That's only as far as how to count it goes. But the Rambam doesn't say that. The Rambam says that they counted the 50 years was a separate year. It wasn't 49. He has a whole he said the time in the 70 years when they weren't there that's when they appeased all of the Shemitahs that they weren't there. And there's a whole calculation of how many, because the Jews didn't observe properly the Yovel and the Shemitah all the time. And the first temple. And so therefore they had to be, the second temple was built only 70 years after, in order to appease them. Okay, Lafil Omar, according to what we said, so now we can understand why, that after the destruction of the second temple, there was a whole new order in the counting of the years. Bisman Beit HaMikdash, in the time of the second, there was a temple, first or second temple. Lo nichlo shanas hachamishim b'minyan sheva shanim. That's right. That's what the Rambam says right now. I remember. In the time that there was a Beit HaMikdash, first and second, the 50th year was a separate year. Separate year. Therefore, even after the Bitl of Yovlos, even after that, there was in fact no law of the Jubilee years, that the servants went back and that the land went back, etc. Were free. Adayan manu Yovlos l'kodesh Shemitah. Nevertheless, they counted the Jubilee year in order to know when the Shemitah year was. In other words, they would count 49 years, 7 times, and then the 50th year would be a nothing year, wouldn't be a Shemitah year. It wouldn't count up. It would be called the Jubilee year. What would they do in the Jubilee year? In the second temple, nothing. They would just count it. There was nothing special about it. Kolomar sheminyan sheva shanim hitchil mi'ashana hachamishit v'achad. when would they start counting the 70, the Shemitah years? In the 50th, not the 49th. It wouldn't be 49 years, and they would start anew. It would be 49 years, one more year, and then they would start a year. Like we said before, Ve'ilu ba'oto hashivim shana shebein chorban bayit rishon, but the 70 years which was between the first and the second temples, and also after the second temple was destroyed, lo manu shasa chamishim. They didn't count the 50th year at all. 7, 7, 7. That's what we do now. That's what we do now. We count 7 years, right? And every 7 years, we make a Shemitah year. And that's what we do. We don't care how many sevens we've counted. Right? If we counted 7 sevens or 8 sevens or 100 sevens, after 7 years, then we start counting another 1 year. So it doesn't make, there's no 50th year. We don't have it nowadays. L'chora, first at glance, madua yesh l'shana. Why should we change the counting like it was in the time of the bias after Shabbat Yovelos? If we say that there's no more Yovel, if we say that there is no more Yovel nowadays, so good. And in the second temple there also was no Yovel. Wasn't no Yovel, but nevertheless they counted the 50th year. And when the second temple was destroyed, and when the first temple was destroyed, until the second temple was rebuilt, they didn't count those years. They didn't count any Jubilee year. They just counted 7 times 7, and then they started again 7 times 7. There was no 50th year. Why did they change it? Why is it different now? Why don't we make at least some sort of a remembrance of the 50th year? What's the problem? Just say this is the 50th year. Okay, okay, good. Let's see. The explanation in an internal way, a spiritual way is, Bizman Abayat, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the Shemitah was a very high level. Therefore, it was connected to the Yovel. In the time of the Bayas, the Shemitah year, the 7th year, was a little bit like Shabbat is now. Something like Shabbat. The Shemitah year. Bizman Abayat, the Shemitah years were a much higher level. Therefore, it was connected with the Yovel. Bizman Abayat Atzmo, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash itself, there were 2 periods. In the time when the Yovel was active, that's like the Shmur. Then the Darga, the Shemitah, was attached to the essence of the Yovel. And then there was when there were no more Yovels, like in the second temple. Sha'az Kavar Hayata Shemitah, then there was still Shemitah, but it was on a lower level. Okay, what's going on? What's happening over here? Shemitah and Yovel, it's not just dry laws. These are levels of holiness. Like Shabbos, Shabbat is a different level of holiness. If we were a little bit more spiritual people, we would feel this. And the relation of the Creator to the creation, how much revelation of the Creator is in the creation. That's what happens on Shabbat. Well, the same thing is also in the Shemitah year. The Shemitah year, every 7 years. It's like a revelation of Shabbat. When there's a Yovel, a 50th year, as that Yovel is like a Shabbat of a Shabbat. It's like a super Shabbat. And that gives energy and power into the Yovel year, to the Shemitah years that come after it. And also could be the years before it also gives. Just like the Shabbat does. Shabbat that we have gives power to the days before and the days after it. But when there was no more Yovel, or at least it was on a lower level, so that also lowered the level of the Shemitah also. That also lowered the level of the Shemitah. So that's what he says. The level of the Shemitah spiritually is connected to the Yovel. As soon as there were no Yovel years, Jubilee years, Sha'az Kavar Yata Shemitah, then the Shemitah was a much lower level. According to the Yerushalmi, it was only from the rabbis. According to the Yerushalmi, if you don't have 100% perfection, then the whole thing drops down to a lower level. The Jubilee wasn't working properly, so according to the Yerushalmi, which is on a much higher and a much more demanding level, so it says that now if there's no Jubilee actually done, like in the second temple, then Shemitah drops down. Now it's only Midrabanan. Az hi akesher, haya kesher, a shmita to the Yovel, rak only because of the number that you make. You count 7 years, so you count. They wanted to count. They wanted to make the counting like it was before. So in the second temple, they counted the Jubilee also. They counted the Jubilee. They didn't do anything. There was no spiritual level. They counted the Jubilee also. Whether the Jubilee year was also a Shemitah year, I don't know. Because nowadays, when they have the Jubilee year, it's a Shemitah year. It's also you don't work the land. So it could be that they didn't work the land back then. Could be. If they didn't let the 2 years in a row, they wouldn't work the land. Could be. But as soon as the second temple was destroyed, or even the first temple was destroyed, the 70 years, the Shemitah is in a much, much lower level. Even more. In the second temple, the Jubilee wasn't in effect because all the Jews weren't on the land. But they still counted the years, so the Shemitah dropped down. When the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and everybody got scattered, then there's no Jubilee at all. We don't even count the 50th year. That also correspondingly lowers down the Shemitah year as well. Lefichach eini keshur ata klal. There's no Jubilee, even according to the number. Okay, ready? Shemitah and Yovel. What is this thing of Shemitah and what is the idea of Yovel? Spiritual.
Question about the counting.
Yeah.
6 years, 7 Shemitah, 6 years. After 49 years, you have the 7th Shemitah, and then the Jubilee would be another year after that. When you recognize it as being a Jubilee or not, that's depending upon the times. Now, the next set of Shemitah years starts the year after that Jubilee
Yes.
year, or does the first?
No.
Okay, so
Nowadays, yes. Nowadays, yes. Nowadays, we don't make any marking of Jubilee at all.
So that 50th year is even, so the next set of.
No such thing as 50th year
Okay,
nowadays.
so the next set of
Shemitah
Shemitah
year.
years starts the first year of the next Shemitah is on
Yeah.
that Jubilee year. So we're sort of like ending up with the system, something like we were discussing the Muslims. They could have the Ramadan because they don't have a leap year.
Yeah, but the Muslims.
No, I know.
But the Shemitah year doesn't have to.
There's no year of months in this calendar.
There's no corresponding thing. The Shemitah doesn't have to fall out on any special time.
So it's got to be different.
What?
It's got to be different.
We'll see. Let's see. Let's look and see. The Shemitah is what's called Bitla Yesh
It's all from down to above.
Shemitah.
Yeah, without a Jubilee.
Well, let's look and see. Let's look and see what the Rebbe says. What is Shemitah spiritually and what is Yovel spiritually? In order to understand this, let's explain first of all what is Shemitah and what is Yovel as far as human beings are concerned. 12:30, yeah. So as beings do is okay. Let me just do we'll go over this tomorrow. The Shemitah is serving God in a way of accepting the yoke of heaven, negating yourself to God. This is what's called Bittul Hayesh. This is what's called surrendering your egotism. Surrendering your egotism. On the other hand, Yovel is a higher level of surrender to God. This is called surrendering your very being. What's the difference between them? We'll talk about it, God willing, tomorrow.